everybody, young Grasshopper here. Welcome to the Cliffside Bunker in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this is YG solo game. I'm doing a run through of 3G40 Tournament Edition, a new variant. So take a look. In this episode, turn 1, we're going to be doing the United Kingdom Pacific. I want to just back up here and do some house cleaning on the last round we just did. Take a look at Germany. And I ended with 14 aircraft, which was short 1. We start with 12. I bought 3. I should have 15. So I added the fighter here. If somebody wants to go back to that video and show me in timeline exactly where I may have lost that fighter in my chip outs and things. But thanks to Contango for pointing that out. Let's go to the comments of the last video. I want to kind to answer as much as I can. In the comment section of the last video, the turn 1 Germany, Shadowstorm says, hey, Grasshopper, great German first turn move. A little unfortunate with Southern France rolls with 1 tank left. Usually the route I take as well with Germany in turn 1, it makes the UK player think next turn is a possible sea lion. So thanks for that, Shadowstorm. I mean, I think losing the 2 mechs and keeping the tank is about right. I mean, obviously if we only lost 1 unit there and had to take 1 mech, that would have been above average, I think. I mean, I'm not a battle calculator guy, but I'm okay with losing the 2 mechs, especially how everything else went. So Hambone says, I like the die roll for UK Scramble for a solo game, keeps you honest. And Christopher Wilson, right above him, I like your idea of using the die roll to determine a scramble. Yeah, I mean, with these solo games, I mean, you can't just automatically assume things when it comes to that scramble decision. I think it's the right thing to do, and in other areas where it looks like that the best possible option is to scramble, I'm still going to roll and have that 1 in 6 chance that they don't, just simply because we don't always know the intentions of the people that we're playing against and whatnot, and they might do things that are unexpected. So Heaven Riley, sea lion is never possible. If a German player feints this, they concede the game if the allied players are even half decent. So if you look at the Garrison video in which Gargantua talks about doing a sea lion, he talks about individuals that feel that as soon as the axis go for London, then the rest of the game is failed. I'm not going to go too much into that. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. I just really love the fact that in this game, sea lion is possible to achieve, even if it ends up losing you the war in the long run, because most Accidentalities variants just don't allow for that strategic option. So I love G40 for even having it possible that sea lion is there on the table. To say it's never possible, I mean, I've seen it done many times, so it is possible. And then he goes on, if a German player feints this, they concede the game if the allied players are even half decent. So I've seen many Axis players win the game with a sea lion, and maybe he's right, maybe we're not half decent allied players, but yeah. Bill Calloway, I usually don't like watching people roll dice, but listening to how your mind works and identifying with it was fun. Shaky camera is an issue while rolling the dice. It feels a bit dizzy to watch this. Yeah, I kind of noticed that when I was rolling the dice. I'm using a bit of a handheld device here, so I mean to follow me around the table. So yeah, I could see how I'm shaking the dice. I'll try and limit that. Wayne Daly says, great video, nice and long. Keep up the great work, mate. Thanks, Wayne. Appreciate it. And Ado16, hey YG, any new card decks coming soon? I just got a coupon code from Make Playing Cards and would love to use it. So, I mean, I do have in my space, my storage space there, a Balance Mod deck and Utah deck, which is for out-of-box gameplay. My Omaha deck, which is for 3G40 Tournament Edition, won't really be out until, I'd say, early June. Okay, so not too much longer, but I don't know how that how long that coupon code lasts, so sorry about that. USS MI sub. I don't understand the defensive purchase of 30 IPCs with an aggressor like Germany. I prioritize Soviet Union over Africa, 8 rounds. So let's see what happens. So, I mean, the 3-plane purchase is something that I'm doing to test what a lot of German players are doing online. And that's why I did that. I wouldn't call it a defensive purchase. I mean, they do attack at 3 or less. And they do help boost the tactical bombers at 4. But absolutely defensive because of how we're using our fighters. We got a 3-plane scramble, of course, in Western Germany. And we've got 2 fighters into Brook to help in those odds if we get attacked. And, of course, a fighter in Rome for a possible scramble. So, yeah, we are using our fighters for defense. But it's not like they're hamstringed. As far as going for Soviet Union, that's a very viable option. I mean, I've seen these playtest games in Tournament Edition where the German player does go east and picks up 2 tokens, like I explained in the beginning of my German video. The options going east, totally viable. Now, as far as Africa, I mean, I hope that it's understood that there is a point to be had in Africa, and it's about the points, and we'll see how the game goes. But early on, we are going for the North Africa token. We have choice to go east or London or whatever. So thanks a lot, guys, for the comments. I'm going to try to do this at the beginning of each video, kind of make it interactive, simply because there's going to be so many videos upcoming just on this video series itself. It's hard for me to do any tutorials or anything when it comes to me occupying my table specifically for this game. So I'm going to try to address many of the comments as well at the beginning of each video. And if we need to make a correction, like the fighter that we missed, and again, I'm curious to find out where exactly did the 15th fighter get removed from the board, but it happened and we corrected it. So let's get into the United Kingdom turn 1. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so the United Kingdom Pacific turn 1, let's take a look. Now, some of the biggest changes in the variant we're going to see here, and of course the order of play, very different from 1940 Global 2nd Edition out of box, and we are now second after Germany, and then turn 1 Japan. This is something that people coming to my tournament are really going to need to work with and understand. The main reason why I did this is for faster gameplay. I'm not just implementing ideas that I think are good ideas but not necessary. This is necessary for fast gameplays. And if you're in a 4-player game, 5 or 6-player game, you're going to notice it's going to be a very, very significant ability to get through game rounds real fast, and that's what we need for tournament. And so turn 1 UK Pacific. Now, of course, I mentioned in my intro that Anzac and the United Kingdom Pacific are now combined nation with Anzac gray pieces. That's why you won't see an Anzac roundel here. So just going over many of the changes, because in this video with the UK Pacific, it is so different from out of box. We have here a minor industrial complex instead of a major. So when we get into our turn and we take a look at our stage cards here, research and development we're not using. That won't be on the new cards in the new card deck. Repair damaged units. We're beginning the game. We have nothing to repair. Purchase new units. We're going to get into that. Make declarations of war, and then our combat movement. So just remember that when you are purchasing for this new nation, you can only build 3 here and 3 here to begin the game. Now we do have quite a bit of income to start the game, 27 IPC. So we combine the 17 from UK Pacific out of box with the 10 from Anzac out of box. That's why we got our 27 IPCs. Going into purchase new units, I went ahead and prepared that. I'm buying 3 infantry, 2 mechanized infantry, and 1 tank. And I believe I'm going to be left with 4 IPCs left over. Let's just get that out of the way. So 4 IPCs left over, and this is spent. I'll try not to be too shaky and jerky with the camera. Now that's done. Our purchase new units is done. Now notice the money. I mean, if you want, you could build more powerful units. You do have the options. Like I said, 3 here. You could ignore that and build 3 very strong, powerful units here. But just to go over some of the purchasing options, I mean, we have a situation where this minor industrial complex will become a major industrial complex once the UK Pacific is at war. Whether it is the beginning of their turn 3 and they declare war, there's a restriction here. The UK Pacific may not declare war until the beginning of their 3rd turn against Japan. Or if Japan brings them into the war with an unprovoked attack, whether it's on the UK Pacific or America or whatnot, this will automatically become a major industrial complex in the same way that the American minor industrial complexes become majors when they're at war. Now, I'm pretty sure there's an option in the rule book that allows the Americans to upgrade one of their factories with cash, the purchase option of upgrading a factory. So if that is the case with that rule, then it also applies here. So the exact same rule for the minor industrial complexes, which will become free major industrial complexes, applies to Calcutta the same as it applies to America. So if that is an option, I think it might be 20 IPCs, then you could go ahead and spend to upgrade that major. That is an option, purchasing option. You could buy fighters, powerful ships. So there's a lot of starting income with 2 minor industrial complexes. Now about the purchasing, I just want to say that we're playing a token game, right? So for the Axis, coming here and taking Sydney is an objective. It's a victory token. So they could position themselves well in the game by coming down here early and taking Sydney. It's very viable. Let's consider what's happening over on the Europe side. It looks like the European Axis are going for the North Africa token. In order for that to be successful, I believe that they need to keep the Americans from coming here to Morocco and taking this, because that's part of all these territories needed for that token. So if it looks that way, then we can assume that the Japanese player is not going to bring the Pacific Allies into the war, not going to bring America into the war. Now, we don't really know the strategic intentions of the Axis just yet and what Japan's going to do. They go after the UK Pacific. However, we need to protect Sydney. That's my opinion, because I've done many playtests in this game and I've lost Sydney a couple of times. And almost in every case, it's something that I did that or something I didn't do to protect it that was the reason why I lost that. Now, obviously, if we're completely overwhelmed with the Japanese and they're chewing on a bone to get it, and they're leaving nothing back to do it, then it becomes a harder defense, and we could possibly lose it as long as we realize that, you know, we want to make sure that it's nothing that we did to help them take that token, because the Japanese are not going to have a lot to do if the objective is to keep the Americans out. They can come up here and attack Russia stuff and keep that agenda in mind. They can take a lot of China and do that in their first 2, 3, even 4 turns. But another option that they could do, because they're going to keep America out of the war, it seems, is that they could go for Sydney, and they could use the rounds in which they're keeping the Pacific allies neutral in order to position themselves to do that. And we need to be disciplined with our money. You know, we're not going to build, you know, all kinds of things on Calcutta, powerful units on Calcutta turn 1, and leave this bare. Because if we lose Sydney, that could have been a real reason why we lost Sydney. We don't want to lose Sydney and it be our fault in any way. So my opinion is we're going to build 3 units there. I got the 3 infantry for there and these 3 units for Calcutta. We need to play discipline with our money. It seems like with this new nation, it's like, oh, we got lots of options, we got lots of money, we can do all kinds of stuff, and it's going to be fun, we can be aggressive. But don't sacrifice Sydney or Calcutta or the Asian token, you know, for experimentation. All right, so that's my advice there. We can't take this, come here, and expect to collect the income. Now, we can come and land here on an allied territory like that Dutch island, but unlike out of box, we cannot claim the 4 IPCs right away, even while neutral, like we can in out of box. We can land there while neutral, but the same way the minor industrial complex rule applies to Calcutta, as it's written for the Americans, is the same as these Dutch islands. So how it's written for the Americans, the relationship between these Dutch islands and America, is now the exact same way it applies to the UK Pacific. All right, so we've made our purchases. Let's get into our stage cards and take a look. We cannot make any declarations of war. That's another difference in out of box with this new nation. Many of the changes in the variation, like I said, are applied to the UK overall. But we can't make any declarations of war. The combat movement, let's take a look. So what I mean by that is we cannot declare war on Japan. Now, obviously, same as out of box, we are at war with Italy and Germany. So we could, in fact, make an attack over here. We could come 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We could land and attack this with a bombardment. We could land and attack this with a bombardment. But I'm not choosing to do that this round. So therefore, I do not have any combat movement to do. We're going to skip that by flipping and going into stage 2. Like I said in the last video, this indicates to the table that we are done all of our combat movements. Once we flip that card, especially at the tournament, we cannot do any combat, any at all. We cannot say, oh, sorry, I wanted to do that, or in Italy's turn, oh, sorry, I forgot I wanted to walk in there. Once you flip that card, it's done, and you cannot do any more combat. Now, conversely, let's back up and take a look at, with that in mind. We have here stage 1. Now, in many cases in our games, we skip the purchase new units phase and go straight into our combat movement. That's allowed in this tournament edition. Unlike out of box, where you must do things in succession, What we're doing is we're allowing stage 1 to skip your purchase new units, skip your repair damage, go straight into combat movement, and start working out your combat movements. This is also going to save time, because how many times have we seen a player just sit there and think about what they're going to buy before moving on? But you know, we say many times, just start doing your combat movement and think about what you're going to buy next later. So that's fine in stage 1, but when you flip this into stage 2, if you haven't purchased, then you can't. You have all this time to purchase your new units. You can even go into your combat movement and think about what you might want to purchase before you get into resolve combat. But once you flip this and you're in stage 2 and you forgot to purchase, you can't. And if you forgot to move into a territory, you can't, because now we're in stage 2, you see. So now we get into defender options, scramble options, there's none. Deploy kamikaze pilots, there's none. Resolve combat, there's none. We're going to go right into non-combat movement. So that's where we are here, okay? Now, these are a little bit more in line. Of course, you have to resolve your combat before you get into non-combat. You can't place your units before you've done any of this. So this is a little bit more. But like I said, flip it and you cannot do any more combat movement. So let's get into our non-combat. And I just want to point out the new national objectives for this new nation, UK Pacific, because they've changed as well. So I'll just say that if the Allies control Shanghai, that's going to be 5 IPC national objective to the UK Pacific. And if the UK Pacific owns Hong Kong, its originally controlled territory, then they're going to get another 5 IPCs for that. And third, if the UK Pacific controls Malaya, they're going to get 5 IPCs national objective for that. And if the United Kingdom Pacific has at least 1 land unit on any of these Dutch islands, they're going to get a 5 IPC national objective. And I'll show you that what I'm going to do in my first non-combat movement, I'm going to take this transport, take this infantry in New Zealand, and go 1, 2, 3. Remember, we have a naval base here. So 3, we're going to place that right there. And the reason for that is we get to use an infantry without stripping our main defense for Sydney. This hardly ever is able to get back. And by placing that here, we can set ourselves up later when we are at war to move into here, get that national objective, and collect that income. Also, too, rather than coming here, and remember, we're not going to get the 4 IPCs. The only reason for going here now is to make sure that we have at least 1 land unit on a Dutch territory and able to get that national objective. This is safer because Japan doesn't really want to deal with that. It's nothing to them to deal with this here. We can easily walk in and get that 5 IPCs without losing an infantry, missing out on that 5 IPC national objective, and all the while giving the Japanese a chance to come and take that 4 IPCs. Now, it's quite possible that the Japanese do take all those islands, but it's going to be more of a burden for them to feasibly come after something where there's nothing in it for them other than to take away that 5 IPC national objective. So let's keep up with the non-combat movements. I want to move this up here with this. This here can always get back to pick up again, or can shift, go 1, 2, or probably turn 2 going to come back here. But we're going to move all this up, except for an AA gun. You're going to notice that I like to split up my AA guns a lot. I don't like having 3 in 1 territory unless it absolutely needs to be that way. For example, Germany, you've seen me split them up, the 6 German AA guns, into 3 piles of 2. I would even venture to say later on when we start gobbling up territories, you're going to see 6 territories with 1 AA gun in each one. It's always good to have an AA gun that shoots at 3 planes in a territory. So we have that many AA guns. So you're going to see me do this a lot, split up my AA guns. That's how I like to deploy them a lot. And of course, we're going to place our 3 infantry here. So this fighter is going to move to Java. And these 2 fighters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to Java as well. And I'm also going to bring the Burma fighter, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 fighters on Java. And that's good positioning. They can go either way. They can go back to help Sydney if we see a risk of losing that token. They can go back to India to put pressure on the Japanese on the mainland. Let's continue here. Now, of course, this is where a lot of the options go. I explained how we could have gone here. We're not going to, of course, because our combat movement phase is over. But as far as non-combat movements, this is a good one. We'll just put that together there like that. We're going to take an infantry and an artillery from India and land in Persia. Okay. That's a non-combat movement, and we're going to tag it. And immediately also too, you see the 2 standing army there. We're going to immediately claim the 2 starting army for Persia, and we have a good force there. This guy's going to walk in here. We're also going to take that. It's good landing spots, good landing options, but nevertheless, just to get that territory and walk towards Iraq, if that's our target. I'm going to put 1 infantry this way and move the rest up into Burma. There's no threat for this stack. It's good positioning. It can always go back. All right. And like I said, you know, I like to divide my AA guns. And this is just gives us options. They can all gather back together into India, per se, if needed. A lot of people will say, well, there's no threat to India. Why not put it all in Burma, right? You can always split them later. But like I said, there's no threat. Just getting into the habit of dividing those AA guns, getting into a rhythm where I like to have at least 1 on many territories rather than, you know, 3. Obviously, Calcutta, if a lot of Japanese aircraft come to attack Calcutta, obviously having the 3 all there in India is the right thing to do. But we'll see. It's just options. Now, I don't like taking this 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3. It's kind of behind. It can't really do anything to help in Africa as far as turn 2 or the Middle East per se. It could help with a bombardment on Iraq, but I think with the aircraft and the landing spot and a bombardment here, I think we'll be fine when it comes to Iraq. We're going to come like this, pick up these 2, plus these will walk in. There's more than enough. We don't want to strip Calcutta and our fleet too much. We want to be disciplined, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this 1, 2, and 3. There's reasons why I like this instead. For example, last thing we want to do is lose Sydney, so I'm going to sacrifice a battleship as a blocker, even if I have to, in order to protect that. Protecting Sydney is crucial, right? Obviously, when the Japanese position more around here in turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, then we have the freedom. Here we have our Sydney still, we have our factory, and we have the freedom to do things, but right now we're just going to tighten things up here until we see what Japan's going to do. And And of course we have good options for these. They're safe. These here, I never like moving these from Malaya. I never like to strip Malaya, especially because it's a national objective, it's a naval base, it's a 3 IPC territory for Japan if they take it. But just for turn 1, we're going to come up here, we're going to move them there. They can always go back, and you know, it's quite possible for me that they do go back to Malaya just to protect it, at least put up a fight there. So I think we're done. Let's see if we've moved everything. Taking it, move this here. These aircraft are just fine right there for now. The air base and whatnot. Now we have to decide what we're going to do with these 2 infantry in Egypt. Now, the major consensus would be to just leave them there. They're good defense, and especially if it looks like the Axis are going for the North Africa token, we need to protect Cairo and whatnot. But I don't like the fact that this is going to come in here, wipe this out, and be there for a turn 2 Italy attack on Cairo. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, and I'm going to put that down there just because the order of play allows me to. Now, if this was out of box Anzac, they wouldn't be able to do this because the Italians go first before Anzac. So as a little experiment, I want to just see if I can't protect that, and it'll be 2 at 2, 1 at 1 against 3 at 2. And then also they're in range with this transport to do something creative. Now, we're not just trying to abandon Egypt right away before Egypt is even threatened, but whatever we do with them, we have to do with them now, just simply because of where they're positioned in the order of play. And I believe that that's it. So with the money and the purchasing options and the creative attacks we can do, and just the fact that we got a stronger, beefier Pacific nation in which all these units can now work together in cohesion, I'm not going to try and say it. What would you guys do? Put it in the comments. You know, do you like what I've done here? Would you have done something different? Just taking into consideration that we do have some grace period here, we can take these units in as options because of their positioning, go and do different things and put them different places. But I think we've got a good start here. We haven't done anything incredibly foolish. We're trying to be disciplined, not to lose Calcutta, not to lose Sydney. That is the focus. So let's go ahead and say that our non-combat movements are over. Although, even though we're in stage 2, we can go ahead and place our units in stage 2. We got 3 infantry in Sydney, and we've got 2 mechanized infantry and a tank in Calcutta. Now, even though we've placed those in out of box, you wouldn't be able to move anything, but you know, because we're in stage 2, even though we've placed our new units, we could see that we missed a non-combat movement and do that before we flip. And once we flip and say we're in stage 3, then no more non-combat movements allowed. So we're going to collect our income. Hey guys, I cut the video just because I saw a discrepancy on my income tracker. I didn't want to have to correct that in the future video. So we see here that we are up 2 IPCs. This one's not worth anything. So up 2 IPCs. We of course control all of our original territories from 27 we go up to 29. All right, so here we have what we spent: 23 IPCs for those 3 infantry, 2 mech, and a tank, and we have 4 IPCs left over. and we are collecting 29. So I'm just going to take one IPC and make that 30. So we have 33 IPCs for our next turn to spend. There's no convoy disruptions, of course, right now, so our turn is pretty much over. So 33 IPCs is pretty good. Like I said, there's lots of options for this new nation. I have a playtester that is a good friend of mine, but he normally critiques the game and the rule changes based on who he's playing. So for example, if he's playing Japan, he'll say that the UK Pacific is way too strong, impossible to deal with. But if he's playing the UK Pacific, he'll complain that, you know, he doesn't get this income jumping on it the way he can out of box. He complains that there's a minor I see now here, doesn't see how these things need to be balanced. And in one particular game, when he was complaining about how the fact that he couldn't jump on and claim this money, he started taking everything from Calcutta and moving west into Middle East. And he was building powerful units and taking that starting income. And I said to him, I said, if you do that and you lose Calcutta, don't blame the rules that you're complaining about that you don't get more money for these. Now, 27 IPCs to start. You see here that we got 33 for our next turn. And even though we only have 2 minor factories, we could easily build a minor factory next turn. And you'll see that if UK Pacific is able to collect for a lot of national objectives, that collection is going to be in the low 40s. And there's more than enough options. There's more than enough money to do well with the UK Pacific. And we'll talk about Japan in the next video and what they can do and what they're up against. But I just wanted to explain that in regards to if you lose the Asia token, if you lose Sydney, there's something that maybe you didn't do to avoid it. And if you did everything to prevent it and you still lose it, then you can feel good about yourself. That's fine. So thanks a lot, guys. Cheers. Really appreciate all the likes and comments you've been giving me. And we'll try and review as many comments as we can at the beginning of the next video. Contango thought that this was going to be a short one just simply because there wasn't much to do, but he underestimated my ability to talk. So it's a long one. But wanted to get that right. I think the income tracker is correct now. We're going to go into Japan turn 1 next video. Cheers, guys. Thanks. May all your rolls be ones. Take care.